The New York Knicks still could not beat the Cleveland Cavaliers. They put up a heck of a fight in the first half, kind of died in the second. Do you want to be glass half full or glass half empty? We'll tell you where you should lie right after this.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Gavin, Schall, your Saturday host of the Locked On NBA podcast. He is Alex Wolfe, editor-in-chief of the Strickland, the greatest Knicks website in the whole wide world. You can check them out on all forms of social media at thestrick.land. In case you got lost and you just ended up here, this is Locked On Knicks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day, your daily podcast in the New York Knicks, give you the most detailed insight on your favorite team at least 5 days a week. And be sure to join thousands of other Knicks fans in subscribing on both YouTube and your favorite podcast platform for the best insight on your favorite team. But if you're a real sicko and that's not enough for you, well, we now have the Locked On Knicks newsletter. That's right, the one-stop shop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. You can sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. It's LockedOnDaily.com and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Knicks newsletter. You get writing from Alex and I and our team of national writers. On today's show, the New York Knicks get outscored by, let me do some quick math here, 19. They get outscored by 26 in the second half. You want to go from the point they had a 15-point lead late in the second quarter. It would make it 34 points from that point forward. Maybe some unsustainably hot shooting, but we're going to talk about still not being able to beat the Cavs, the disparity between the two halves, and some of the struggles of Karl-Anthony Towns and Mikal Bridges. But right before that, I want to just remind you that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when you place your first $5 bet wins. All right, Alex, I've delayed long enough. Still cannot beat an elite Eastern Conference opponent. You might have had some hope in the first half, and Cleveland squashed it pretty quickly right at the start of the third quarter.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to look at the glass half full first, like OG Anunoby had a hell of a first half, 19 points. It was hitting from deep early, which that was encouraging. I mean, still as it stands, 5 of 8 from 3 over the course of the whole game, which is great because that was kind of the one thing that was lacking a little bit the last couple of games. Now, granted, with the give there is take, he's been averaging like over 10 free throw attempts per game for the last few games as well, and ends with 0 of those in this game. So, still managed to get inside a little bit to a degree, but mostly was more reliant on the 3-point shooting in this one, which is fine. Some days are going to be like that, but I don't want to say that he personally disappeared in the second half. I mean, he struggled to kind of find that same rhythm again, and I think that Cleveland did a better job of trying to keep the ball out of his hands. Karl-Anthony Towns, like 25 points, 13 boards, and not bad shooting, 9 of 16 overall, 6 of 7 from the free throw line. Like on the surface, it looks like a decent enough game for him, but I thought that there was just some lackadaisical play from him. 7 turnovers, which included a couple bad offensive fouls, and just managed to, I think, at least kind of shoot them out of the game in the third quarter. Like he just kept going at Jared Allen and Evan Mobley and kind of getting stonewalled. And, it kind of came to a head in the fourth quarter. There was like one last gasp where the Knicks maybe could have started to make something happen. And he goes up, I think, trying to like jam it on Allen, and Allen just denies him to the point that like it sent both of them to the floor. Like he blocked him that hard that they both just ended up on the floor. It kind of felt like that was just sort of the stamp on this one. It was just the Knicks couldn't get anything going in the second half. What was a pretty nice flowing offense in the first half, maybe minus like Mikal Bridges was kind of back to being a little too passive again, which you don't love to see. But, other than that, the offense was running pretty well in the first half. It was very reminiscent. I said this to you before we started recording. It reminded me a lot of like that one game against Oklahoma City where the Knicks came in and they played really well in the first half, and you kind of left that first half going like, all right, like just close this one out. And like, this is great. Finally, like a good statement win, like showing you can hang with these teams. And then the second half, it was just kind of like, oh, like Cleveland made some adjustments and Donovan Mitchell turned the switch on and just started putting everybody in a blender, including Mikal. And hitting all kinds of crazy tough shots and all this stuff, and then it just kind of the wheels fell off at a certain point, and the Knicks just couldn't get it back together, unfortunately.
Yeah, and look, it was obviously, again, you want to be glass half full. Really tall task coming into this one. You don't have your top 3 point guards. Obviously, the self created offense from Brunson, but even the way that campaign has used the offense with his willingness to get up threes, with his ability to attack closeouts and attack gaps, his ability to run pick and roll. They really miss that. They miss Deuce as like obviously DeLon Wright was again in the first half at least, and pretty good in the second half. Like fantastic defensively for the most part when he's out there, but like only shot 1 for 5 from 3, and was getting really good looks from distance, and those are shots. If it's Deuce McBride out there, maybe they're going in. So you can certainly look at the 3-point guards missing. I think they really missed Mitchell Robinson in this game, even though the only reason they were even, or not the only reason, but part of the reason they were even remotely in it is they got a great Precious Achiuwa after a low point against Philly last night. I think literally, like statistically, one of the worst games of the NBA season that any players had. So he bounced back. I'm sure we'll hit on that a little bit later, but that is just a lot to overcome. You could argue the first half stuff was a little fluky just in terms of like how red hot OG Anunoby was. Like he was literally making everything. 19 points in that first half. He became the first, this is a great stat from ESPN, the first Knick in 25 years at least to have a first half where he had 5 threes and 5 assists, accounted for 30 points. And you pretty much knew, like, okay, OG is not as good as he's been. He's not going to do that again in the second half. He only scores 4 points the entire second half. Towns, to your point, has a really long cold stretch. Like he scores his 7th point with 5 minutes left in the first quarter. He doesn't score again in the first half, which might have been why he was so aggressive coming out. And then I think feel free to go a different direction if you want, but I kind of want to focus on Mikal first, because to me, he's like the biggest litmus test here. We've obviously been incredibly complimentary of him lately, but this is another game. I cited the stats on previous episodes. I can go back to them if we want to, but he has been pretty invisible in these big games, first Cleveland game and first half against Oklahoma City aside. And this is another game where he's just non-existent. And if you want to look at it one way and say, hey, that's on Tibbs, like they weren't running enough action for him, they weren't forcing the basketball into his hands. That's one way to look at it. Or you could say like, hey, like he didn't seek stuff out. Like Josh Hart, like largely based off his own aggression, found a way to get up 19 shots in a game where Mikal Bridges gets up 6 and Josh Hart just plays 1 more minute. So I don't know, is that a structural issue or is that a Mikal Bridges issue?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's a little of column A, a little of column B, right?
Yeah.
Like I think that we've talked about this before, but it seems obvious that Mikal doesn't have that give me the ball mentality in him, really. It seems like things need to be kind of drawn up for him, especially like right now without a Jalen Brunson to like feed him in the corner or whatever. Like it seems like he, and they've been doing a good job of doing this. Like they've had him initiating pretty often recently. And then in this game, that kind of just didn't really happen as much. He wasn't bringing the ball down as much, or at least there wasn't as much in the cards for him to try to do. And, there was even, it's getting bad when even Wally Zerbiak is like low key calling you out on the broadcast as the color commentator. But Wally even was like, all right, like Donovan Mitchell just hit another one in Mikal's face. Like it's kind of, like now would be the time to see Mikal like come down and like try to hit one in his face. Like the Knicks need someone to step in and, start trying to take this game over a little bit. And obviously, like you said, like OG kind of emptied the clip in the first half. And then, Cat was struggling to start the third quarter when things were starting to kind of come unglued. And then Mikal like just kind of didn't take any shots. Like I'm going to look right now, just out of curiosity, like when his shots were all taken. He took 1 in the first, 2 shots in the second, 2 in the third, 1 in the fourth. Like just not a lot of shot taking in this game from Mikal. Like he needs to just seek it out more, or maybe the Knicks just need to try to get him involved more, I guess. But like, how much can you do when the guy just isn't, even the attempts he was taking, it's just like, there wasn't anything particularly aggressive about what he was doing in this game. He maybe took them off the dribble like once, maybe twice, but didn't really, it just wasn't the level of aggression that we've seen recently. I don't know. It's just everything that he did felt very passive in this game, and you don't love to see that. So he's got to find, to your point, a way to be more consistent with that, especially against these tougher opponents, because all you're going to find in the postseason is tough opponents. You're not going to have any more of the cream puff games like you're having recently. And he's got to figure that out soon, because the playoffs are very much looming at this point.
Yeah, and I do think a factor was that he didn't have a drop big to attack, which is where we've seen him be incredibly effective lately. Like, I mean, the last game I was on, I was talking about him just spending the whole second half, right? Like feasting on Donovan Clingan. Because Donovan Clingan is a extraordinary, like prodigious defender around the rim. He is like extremely heavy footed though. And when he's in drop, like Mikal was like, get to a spot, easy shot, get to a spot, easy shot. And like against Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, like they're going to switch onto Mikal, but that doesn't mean, like to your point, that he still can't attack that. Like in the first half, like he had a drive where he had a fadeaway over Jared Allen, and then he had a play where Josh Hart, I think kind of stupidly, set him a pick because they got him switched onto Mobley, who's arguably the best defender in basketball right now. But you know what? Mikal went right at him and like snuck a layup under his arm. And like the Mikal Bridges we've been seeing lately, to your point, the guy we've seen on the Brooklyn Nets all year, like was forced to take shots in these types of matchups. And even if he's not getting, again, like what it's similar to Josh Hart, right? Like you're just not going to get like a perfect look against these teams. That doesn't mean that you don't shoot. Like he went 3 for 6. I've said this a bunch this year. I'd rather he go 5 for 17. Like just get the shots up. And no, it's not all on him. Some of it's on Tibbs. Some of it is how Cleveland was defending. Like they adjusted in the second half. And this is a point. Shout out Shax over at the Strickland for pointing this out. Cleveland was top blocking everything the Knicks did in the second half. So basically you're cutting off guys from like getting open from threes. You're cutting them off from doing dribble handoffs. It should theoretically open some stuff up backdoor. But because Cleveland has Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, and they're so long and they're so mobile, they're able to cover enough ground that like you can't really get inside. And that's the point where you're like, all right, Jalen, like this defense is impregnable. Like go make something happen. And the Knicks just did not have that guy. So I do think there were structural issues, again, just not having your starting point guard that disproportionately affected Mikal Bridges versus someone like Josh Hart, who was able to create some offense out of thin air, or Cat, even if it was inefficient, was able to drive and create some offense out of thin air. But that being said, like sometimes like just let him bring the ball up if you have to. Like he has to find a way to get the ball and get up shots. That's partially on Tibbs, partially on Mikal Bridges. But we should highlight some of the good OG Anunoby. There was an incredible amount of good with him. We'll get into that next here on Locked On Knicks.
But first, we got to let you know about our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. And daylight savings snuck up on us again. And if you're feeling that lost hour of sleep, 5 Hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little boost to power through. So whether you're staying up late, watching the NCAA tournament, squeezing in around a golf after work, or just trying to keep up with your busy day, 5 Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. And I love the on-the-go convenience because, sometimes I think I used this same example last show, but after work on a warm day, I'm always keeping the basketball shoes in the car. I want to go play some basketball. Sometimes I can get my friends together. We can go and play. And sometimes though, I get up early for work, whatever, I'm dragging a little bit. Maybe the allergies got me down a little bit, and a 5 Hour Energy just peps me right up, gets me ready to go play hoops for a couple hours and get some of that much needed exercise and sunshine. So head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack delivered right to your door. And if you need one now, grab a 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They're everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized.
Also, I'd tell you about our good friends over at Wayfair. Wayfair, spring is here, and that means it's home project season. Whether you're refreshing a room or tackling a full renovation, Wayfair is the best kept secret for all things home improvement, from small updates like stylish cabinet hardware to major upgrades like new vanities, sinks, or outdoor lighting. Wayfair has quality products for every budget. I just upgraded my kitchen with Wayfair, and the selection was incredible. They're fast. They're free and fast shipping. Made it so easy. No hauling heavy items from the store. I love that they have top brands like GE and Moen at great prices. Shopping was seamless, and I found exactly what I needed to fit my space and style. Wayfair makes home improvement easy. Get started now at wayfair.com. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. All right. Let's unless you wanted to talk through anything else, Alex. I think we can comfortably get into OG Anunoby, I just wanted to quickly recap the game first because we didn't really get into how it went. The Knicks raced out to an early 23-12 lead. They made 5 of their first 7 threes. Cat actually was like cooking early in this game and looked like he was on track to have a really monster game going at Jared Allen. Cleveland ends the second quarter on a 10-2 run, and then they open the second half on a 7-2 spurt. So that was a 17-4 run in total. It got to a point where from that 15-point lead, it was a 37-14 run. I mentioned the top blocking. Cleveland was pretty liberally switching everything. Josh Hart had great energy all game. He basically single-handedly put together a 9-2 spurt that made you think for a second the Knicks were going to be back in it. And then no, Cleveland punches back, 8-0 run, and basically 5 straight points to start the fourth quarter. And the Knicks never really, I think they cut it to 5 at one point, but you never really felt like they had a real chance to win this game after that.
Yeah, pretty much. But luckily, OG Anunoby gave them that chance early on, and I thought that we saw just another step in the development of him turning into just a different offensive player right now. I mean, there's just something about how he's carrying himself, the shot making, everything right now. And obviously, like we saw in the second half, he's not infallible, and he's not, like Kevin Durant or something. Where there's just going to be nights where there's literally nothing you can do to stop him. And yet, it's pretty easy to kind of not even have to squint your eyes that hard and say, hey, like with Jalen Brunson back and healthy, and hopefully, he and Cat having a renewed vigor in the playoffs of playing with each other and, both being potent scoring options, like having OG Anunoby as the third guy you can count on, really not bad. And, I hope to include Mikal Bridges in that conversation too. Like, it would be really nice if you could have both those guys just kind of operating at the level that they've been operating recently up until today. But OG just in this game was like, I mean, the shot making from 3 was crazy. The one heat check that he hit, like, it was the one right after the play I'm about to talk about next, which was the most eye-popping play that he made, this like crazy like Euro step that he had. But he took this like sidestep 3 right after that, and it was just so smooth where I was like, this is like a different player, I mean, he was low-key going through his own, like almost like Josh Hart moment around the middle of this season where the 3-pointers just weren't going in. His percentage had gone from like 40% early in the season, and for the first couple months to like down to like below 35, I think, for a minute there, or like right around 35. So like his percentage dipped a huge amount. Like the shots just weren't going in. And now all of a sudden he's just kind of like, even, I mentioned earlier in the show, like the threes weren't really going in for him recently, but he's just shooting it with so much more confidence on a night to night basis that you feel like it's going to go in. And that one was just like one of those that he put it up. And when it went through, I actually I don't normally audibly cheer or like emote during a game, but like that one went in and I was like, ooh. I was like, what the heck just happened? Like, it didn't even touch anything. It was just one of those like beautiful, like drop in a bucket shots that just goes straight through the hoop because it was such a nice rainbow shot. But before that, I mean, busted out just another move that's like another thing where he's like the butterfly coming out of the cocoon here. Like he drives in and had on this
Jared Allen.
On this particular play, it was Jared Allen on him and drives in off that switch and just like lulls him to sleep and then pulls the quick little Euro step right at the end and gets around him and goes up for the layup. Just gorgeous stuff. Very smooth, very different from what we saw from OG, even like earlier this year, where it seemed like for the most part, the most you were going to get away with him was like a straight line drive, possibly a layup, possibly a dunk, but like not a ton of creativity like that. And he's just like bringing out things like that almost on a daily basis right now on this hot streak. And also now is that 8 straight games with 20 or more points, which
with 23 or more. Yeah. 8 in a row.
23 or more points. Yeah. So, I mean, just a crazy streak he's on right now. And again, I keep saying this and maybe it's just a fingers crossed type thing, but like hopefully carries over to the playoffs. Really hoping for that.
Yeah, me too. I almost I don't want to get hurt again because he was so good at the start of the season, and I think reasonably we're saying like if he keeps this up, like he should be an all-star with how good he is defensively. There were very few guys in the NBA, which is like, I mean, what the refrain would be if you were ever to argue that Kawhi Leonard at any point was the best player in the world, you would say like, all right, who's better than him on both offense and defense? And the list for OG is like like extremely short the way he was playing then. And then to your point for like, it was a long stretch. It was like 3 months. Like he was aimless. Like wasn't hitting threes. Like the defense was not really at that level. And like he's been incredible. And to your point, like it could, like, for someone who's been very vocal about wanting a bigger role, like, first of all, shout out to him for like actually like being up for it. But secondly, like my concern is like, does that continue when Jalen Brunson's back? We don't need to have that conversation. I had that with XJ a lot earlier in the week, but I think he's making a case for like there should be some possessions that are centered around him. And to your point, that drive on Jared Allen, just the amount of force he generated, like, it was great defense by Allen, who still almost blocked it. He generated to get away. Like, I would want like John Brenkus of sports science back in the day on that. Like it felt like, I don't know, I can't estimate it because I have no clue. Like even like the context of what those numbers are, but he looked like Anthony Edwards level of like explosion, to the point that like you wouldn't have been surprised if there was a dent in the court after. It was just a crazy play. Had like another really nice like a 3-play sequence earlier where he had a corner three, he beat Mobley for a rebound, posted Strus on the other end, one dribble, drew help, live dribble, bounce pass to Josh Hart. He made that same pass against the Blazers, if I'm remembering correctly, for a dunk. This one was for a layup, but like the passing is better. Like that 5 assists in the first half. The defense is amazing. Had Mike Breen called out the Curly Neal dribble in the second half where he fell to his knees and he crossed up Sam Merrill from his knees and got to the rim and put it back in. Just a complete game from OG Anunoby. And to your point, like he if you got a full season of this, he would be like third team All NBA, second team All NBA, like type of conversations. Like this is a rare 2-way level that you don't see a lot. And he's like we talked about his contract and we're like, is this going to be a bad contract if he stays this healthy and plays this well? Like that is a absolute steal of a contract for the New York Knicks. But still plenty more to get to. I want to shout out Josh Hart, both good and bad, because there was mostly good. And Karl-Anthony Towns, another frustrating night to him, before touching on Precious Achiuwa, Landry Shamet, and wrapping this one up. We'll get into it all next here on Locked On Knicks.
But first, I want to let you know about our friends over at FanDuel. And it is the NCAA tournament still. Just a little more to go. FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. And you could stay in on the action with tournament games happening, well, the copy says almost every day. Sadly, not almost every day anymore, but we still got a few more to go. There's always something exciting to bet on. And, you know, hey, well, what better way to make Final Four and championship weekend a little more exciting than with a little skin in the game and a little action on it. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. All right, Gavin, we're back in, getting through the final, crossing the T's, dotting the I's on this 124-105 loss to the Cavs. Truly weird seeing that final score. It really got away so fast. They were so close for so long, and then all of a sudden, the doors just blew open. But yeah, I'll give the floor to you here for Josh Hart. I mean, 19 points, 5 boards, 4 assists, 2 steals. 8 and 19 from the field, 3 and 9 from 3. I think we saw some of the telltale Josh Hart things of being a little reluctant to shoot from 3. Ironically, one of the only ones that he made was one that he like took way too long to decide on, and I think passed it inside and then got the ball back and then had to take it with 2 seconds left on the shot clock and took a heave from the one side and managed to make that one. So maybe just give him a hot potato when you want him to shoot a 3, and then he can remove all the overthinking out of it, but still managed to put up 9 threes. So at least was getting the volume up. But yeah, I'm kind of with your assessment. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it, but I kind of thought that it was kind of an up and down game from him, but encouraging in some ways, and maybe discouraging in others.
Yeah, that's a good way to preface everything.
Nice little hedge, you know. Yeah, everybody loves a good hedge.
Those are exactly my thoughts on Josh Hart. I first of all want to commend him because I think the one element that I haven't captured as I've maybe tortured everyone listening by just brutally describing the different ways Cleveland beat this Knicks team down is just that like Cleveland just played with like they ramped up the intensity, and the Knicks, to be fair, coming off a back-to-back, have played like weeks of basketball now with very, very little like meaningful depth, though ironically, these guys are somehow playing less minutes than they were when the Knicks had their full roster. That's like maybe Tom Thibodeau in a nutshell for you. But like it would be fair to say that the Knicks were exhausted, but Cleveland like just went up a level in the second half in terms of their energy. They were absolutely killing the Knicks on the offensive glass in the second half of this game. I'm going to pull up the numbers right now because I imagine they were quite bad. Cleveland had 8. It felt like way more. Cleveland had 8 offensive rebounds, which is still a very high number in the second half. The Knicks actually had 11, so maybe I'm wrong about this. But anywho, I thought Josh Hart and a shout out to Precious Achiuwa and of course OG were like the 3 guys who actually like matched that intensity pretty well throughout the game. I didn't have a big issue. Like I was actually pretty happy that he was willing to put up threes. Or like about halfway through the season, I think he was the single most efficient player in basketball taking shots inside the final 3 seconds of the shot clock. And he's fallen off a little bit, but for whatever reason, I think maybe because he doesn't overthink it, like they just seem to go in. But just like a lot of like little energy plays, got a transition dunk from OG Anunoby, like had an offensive board that actually set up the OG sauce play on Jared Allen. And then literally the next play had a steal, like baseline save to OG, would have been a layup on the other end, but OG like fired like a Jameis Winston style, like laser into the crowd. It was actually a Josh Hart style laser into the crowd over the head of DeLon Wright, who was wide open under the basket. He had a great like defensive play to end the first half, cutting off Mobley, then rotating over and swatting Mitchell. Second half again, like he was sort of the one guy who was still really playing his butt off, at a drive and reverse layup on Hunter. And then I think literally the next play, like rip away, hit ahead to DeLon. DeLon got it back to him, pushed to Precious for a lob. At that point, the Knicks cut the lead down to just 81-80. And that was right before Cleveland made their run back. And that was all part of like that single-handed like 9-2 run he put together that was capped off by the shot clock beating 3. I think where I say this was a mixed night is you just like, I've used this term with Josh Hart earlier this year. He is overtaxed playing 37 minutes against a team as good as the Cavs. He like there are just limitations to his game, namely that Cleveland just plays off him and dares him to shoot, that unfortunately affect the entire Knicks offense. And I think if we want to move on to Karl-Anthony Towns, you could say even though Cat was pretty efficient on the night, you look at the 7 turnovers, and a lot of them were not in the half court. A lot of them were just like chucking ahead transition passes. But some of the ones that were in the half court, I think were born out of frustration of Cleveland being able to throw 3 or 4 guys at him. And I think you are seeing the compounding effects of multiple guys who are being asked to do too much. And that doesn't get exposed against the Blazers or the Sixers, but that does get exposed against the 61-15 team in the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, I think that this was a game where the Knicks missed. I mean, maybe this will be a nice segue to Precious, who I think did a good enough job filling this role to a degree. But like this was, I feel like, a game where you kind of miss having a Mitch that can kind of just knock some heads a little bit for a couple minutes, because I think Cleveland felt early and often that they could get away with a lot. And I feel like this game was officiated like fairly loosely. And that led to a lot of frustration on the Knicks end. I mean, there was just the amount of times I saw Cat or Josh Hart, especially, do the like shrug, like look over towards one of the refs, you know, kind of thing. It seemed like that got under their skin a lot. And to Josh's credit, I don't even feel like it was on his own plays a lot. I feel like he was watching like DeLon Wright like 3 or 4 times. It was like, come on, like Mitchell is all over him or whatever. And then the Cat like just clearly was, especially in that third quarter, bothered by the lack of space that he was getting, and then the lack of calls he was getting in that lack of space. But to their credit, I think, well, first off, I mean, he needs to get used to that kind of thing, because that is how the playoffs are going to be soon enough. Like the calls are not just going to be waiting there in the playoffs for the most part. Like you have to just kind of play through it and keep your head up, you know, like during the playoffs, and, you know, not be surprised if you don't get a call. But secondly, I just think, you know, it got to him a bit, and then it led to him getting frustrated. It led to him making some less than smart choices with the ball in his hands. You know, just a couple of like dumb offensive fouls that, I mean, to his credit, I guess, like, you could argue like, hey, they're not calling the defensive fouls, and like they let, like, it was kind of a weird sequence where they let like a pretty borderline one from Josh Hart go with no call, or like they
Mhm.
called a blocking on it where Josh Hart just
Yeah,
kind of like,
Garland.
yeah, where he threw his shoulder down and like put Garland in the first row practically. And they called a block on that. And then Cat did something very similar, like 2 plays later, and they called an offensive foul on him. And I think you could tell that that sort of irked him.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. It's just like, I don't know if that's like a reputation thing, like Josh Hart's reputation precedes him, so he gets more benefit of the doubt or what. But, you could tell it was kind of a frustrating second half for Cat, but to your point, it's not helped by the fact that the ideal way to play this guy is, especially against a team like this that has like 2 really good interior defenders that have recoverability and have the ability to close in on him very quickly and make his life hell. You kind of need to play a true 5 out to make that happen. And I mean, not only just the Josh Hart of it all, I mean, for as much good as he did, like even just having a Precious out there doesn't help Cat, in that scenario either. And there was some Precious at the 4, Cat at the 5 minutes in this game, however sparing they were. But yeah, just that not the best overall game for Cat. I kind of felt for him in a way, and yet I also feel like he kind of shot himself in the foot in the second half too, by compounding the problem by not just getting turnovers, but having some of them be offensive fouls as well, which then gets him in foul trouble, and then completely changed how he had to play on the defensive end, where I think a lot of what went wrong for the Knicks on defense was the Cat was just going way too far in the drop down the stretch, was not contesting, which is an unfortunate thing that we see sometimes when he gets in foul trouble. He takes that as just like, well, I can't even put my hands up then. And it's like, come on, man, like you got to just be smart with your hands. Like, but you have to at least get them up. Like, at least, start trying to make someone fear you a little bit and fear the inside. It was a real ugly second half for him. I don't want to belabor it too much because it was not the worst Cat game we've ever seen, especially with the first half being pretty good. But again, like I said, it's just, I feel like this would have been a game where it would have been really beneficial to have Mitch for like 15, 20 minutes to just go out there and be able to just bang a bit, not worry about foul trouble, like just go out there, kind of teach them a lesson, so to speak, and get in some guys' faces, get some blocks, or at least stonewall some guys at the rim for a good run or whatever. But maybe we want to get into it just to close on a nice note, but I'll eat crow. Like I literally just said in the last episode that, well, I think this was pretty much the nail in the coffin for Precious having a rotation spot anymore. And then he turns around and just has like probably one of his best games of the season, if not the best game of this season so far for him.
Yeah, I'll note on Cat real quick just to put a bow on it that you summed up my thoughts really well. There was good stuff there, like some of the shot making early in the game, like that spinning turnaround jumper he had on Jared Allen, which ended up again being his last points of the first half, was nasty. Like he was going at Allen and kind of bullying him early, and then had like a sequence where like he three straight times when he had the basketball, he threw it away twice trying to outlet it to Josh Hart, and like one sailing out of balance, one throwing right to Darius Garland, basically one trying to go back to DeLon Wright, and he just wasn't really ready for it. And then to your point, the frustration fouls, like the third one was him just hooking Jared Allen's arm. And like, I don't get why he does that. Like maybe I missed some where he gets away with it, but it seems like that is seen by the refs and called literally every time. It seems like, to me, like childish, like, all right, screw you, you've been bumping me, I'm just going to wrap your arm, I'm going to get around you. Like, I don't really know why he does that. And then second half, like again, got off to like a good start, like was getting to the basket really well. Like had a pump and blow by on Jared Allen, like for an and one. Had that laser. That was a really nice play to Mikal Bridges after Mikal like slipped off an off ball screen to OG. But he was like grabbing his knee too. Like it's pretty clear like that. I'm wondering if like that's a surgery this offseason. It's one of those things where it's like, oh, now they tell us like where the next season end, they'll be like, yeah, Cat's been playing with like a slightly torn meniscus the whole season or something, because that is on and off bothered him for months and months and months, and he might more beat up than we think. So I want to give him a little grace defensively, but I'll just note one more time, like the defense was terrible. Like I thought the single worst play was like, it was similar to what we saw when they played the Warriors. Like he went into a deep drop on Darius Garland, and Garland just walked into a three, one of the best open 3-point shooters in basketball. And Josh Hart was absolutely pissed after, and he has like every right to be. And I don't know if the anger is a Cat or if it's a Tibbs, like clearly, and maybe Tibbs just doesn't want to show too much because these games don't really matter. But like, if you just switch that, like maybe Jared Allen puts Josh Hart in the stanchion and gets a dunk. Maybe you have to double down low and like someone else gets a three. But I thought a consistent issue in this game was like the Knicks just like giving up easy shots because they were like, oh, we can't we can't possibly do this. And it's like, no, like do not give up a Darius Garland three. Like any other shot is probably better than that, other than just like a straight up dunk under the basket. Like twice, like they got into rotation and they helped on Isaac Okoro, and it's like, and they left DeAndre Hunter wide open the court. It's like, make Isaac Okoro hit a three because DeAndre Hunter's a much better shooter. So I know I'm going beyond the scope of just Cat, but I think this is another game where like I think overtaxed is the right word to use. Like you were asking to do too much, and I think you made the key point. Like some of the reads and just the degree of difficulty would be turned down so much by actually surrounding him with shooting. Which, to be fair to Tom Thibodeau, he doesn't really have the option to do right now because so many of the Knicks shooters are hurt. Real quick, I won't get into like too many of the specifics with Precious Achiuwa. All I'll say is like he was like kind of cooking and embarrassing Evan Mobley. Like I don't know if Evan Mobley stole his girlfriend or something, but he was like playing pissed against Evan Mobley, like beating him to offensive rebounds, like shoulder bumps into the lane, pump fakes, layups, finishes. Had like a great rotation after Josh Hart got dusted to block DeAndre Hunter at one point. Second half was not as good. At one point, Mobley got him back and like beat him for a rebound and a dunk. And like, and also there were plays where he was out there and like the Knicks offense just died because someone got double teamed and they'd spray it to him. And Cleveland just wouldn't guard him. So that was annoying. Landry Shamet, two nice shots in the first. Again, I won't get into details to save the time, but he was god awful in the third quarter, both offensively and defensively, getting cooked, missing easy shots, missing good looks at threes. And like, if he had like the same night he had the last three games, the Knicks were probably a little bit more in this game down the stretch than they were.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'll just choose to ignore that as a Landry Shamet booster and just acknowledge that everything you said is true. But yeah, as a guy who loved Precious, then was just about ready to write Precious off. I mean, this was vintage Precious, I guess. I mean, he was pretty efficient, had 13 points in 21 and a half minutes, like shot 5 of 9. And yeah, to your point, I mean, I thought he was really crafty. I thought that he was taking the right approach to try to beat these guys, which was like, yeah, these guys will swallow you up on the inside. So like, you're going to have to kind of make them screw up. And he managed to do that a few times of getting them to bite on shot fakes and just being patient, getting the ball, probably having like somewhat of a timer in his head of like a 3-second timer, to be like, all right, I get 3 Mississippis down low here. Like I'm going to use every little bit of it. And he would do that, get the ball, whether it's off a rebound or off a feed, and then just kind of like patiently wait it out and then make the right play and go up and make a layup. At one point, the one that really stood out to me was like, he was like straight up stranded under the hoop. And like, I was like, oh man, he's kind of screwed. And then he just managed to make it happen with just a couple pump fakes and then, just kind of cleared a little space. And then it went up with a really nice crafty little finger roll from almost directly under the hoop, which I thought was really good. So yeah, good night for him. And there were honestly times, especially in the second half, at least before he had made his first way in, where I was like, when things weren't going right with Cat, I was almost like, Tibbs, pull the plug early, like get Precious back in here. With how he was playing in the first half, like I kind of feel like he would be the better option at this particular moment. And it didn't really work out that way for him in the second half. But yeah, anyway, I think that's about all we need to talk about this one. We've already gone on long enough. My goodness. So yeah, we'll possibly be back before the end of this week, but more than likely probably back in your feed next week to talk through hopefully Jalen Brunson's return over the weekend. Back-to-back games, Saturday and Sunday. Heavily rumored that he's going to be back on Sunday against Phoenix. Shout out to our buddy CP the Franchise over at KFTV for getting that scoop. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. Hopefully by the time Monday rolls around, we're talking about Jalen Brunson back out there cooking again, and maybe getting towards an actualized version of maybe the best version of this Knicks team before the playoffs. So we'll see if that all comes to pass. But until then, thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace out, everybody.